Thank you all. Next on our agenda tonight is personal appearances. Adam Durham is here to speak to us about the stop signs and timber trails.
Adam Durham, 421 Meadowlark Drive. You all saw me back in May, and I think maybe I was a little soft because I made a request, but I'm not making a request. Dangerous stop signs were placed throughout my neighborhood as a result of my own council members' decision-making, along with the city manager going to Public Works after a plat had already been approved and assessed, and the appropriate stop signs were included within that plat. Now, if you're sitting here on this council wondering why I'm lecturing you when you're not my representative, that's a very fair point, very fair question, something you should be asking yourself. Because in the working session in December where these were approved, you were lied to. Mr. Townsend told you that traffic through our neighborhood increased as a result of the roundabout. I'm sorry, no, the roundabout decreased traffic through timber trails. Now, did the opening of Meadowlark Drive as a cut-through display a little more traffic on Meadowlark Drive? Of course, because residents of Timber Trails and the adjoining neighborhood directly behind me now have an access point. But you've littered stop signs, unsafe stop signs, especially on Meadowlark Drive, and you did the same thing on Kelly right behind me that caused drivers to cruise through stop signs all the time. And I actually don't blame them for cruising through stop signs because they're unwarranted. You could ask our chief of police here. I guarantee he has more than enough experience under his belt to explain to you why stop signs aren't used in this way and how often his officers get to see drivers go through. I've watched the state troopers that live behind me, California, roll through the stop signs. The reality is, I'm not going away until the stop signs go away. I know I scared a lot of you. You don't even want to talk about it on public record amongst yourselves. Mr. Mayor, you're fighting a civil engineering nightmare right in our back door that endangers our community. Do you really want the message that the public hears that this council and the city staff can't handle civil engineering 101 basics? I'd like to give Mr. Krass's staff at least a little bit of support in saying he obviously has at least one civil engineering on his staff that it took a look at the plat and said, these are the appropriate stop signs originally as the plat was drawn up and approved, which is why the ones that Mr. Townsend pushed through never should have existed. They never existed for 20 years prior to the last phase of the plat being developed, and they should never exist today. So I highly encourage you to have a public record discussion amongst yourselves on how we're going to get these stop signs removed from my neighborhood. I will be here every council meeting if I have to, and I will continue to bring national data to support my demands, if that's what it takes. But it shouldn't be that hard. Mr. Baker, you even made the comment in the meeting, why can't we just put up yield signs? I know you were making that in a little bit of jest, but we don't even need yield signs because we all learn in driver's education when you get your driver's license at a T-stop, the major thoroughfare has the right of way. You yield. There's no traffic, you pull right on out and make your turn. This is easy. It shouldn't be difficult. I should not have to be here again lecturing this council. But I will, Mr. Mayor.
Are you done?
I am done. Thank
So
you.
I'm going to break from protocol. Usually our protocol is we don't respond to presentations before the council, but tonight I'm going to break from protocol because we've had some in-depth talks here with staff and other council members. I don't believe, sir, that there is an appetite at all for redress on this particular issue. There was considerable discussion originally when the ordinance was passed. We would anticipate that you could learn a little bit more if you came and spoke to staff in a more closed setting with them so they can fully explain to you what they've explained to the rest of us here. And you can come up as often as you want, but you're not going to get any additional redress from this council at this time.
Fair. Thank you very much for your time.
And we'll move on to staff reports. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report for Development Services.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and Council, I've got a little bit lengthier report this evening with respect to the month of June and some exciting things to announce. Relative to building permits, it was a busier than average month. The month of June, we had 37 new home permits issued, 7 of those being detached single family and 30 of those being within the Oak Ridge Farms fourth phase over on the east side of town. Another busy month for inspections and code enforcement. This tends to be the busy time of year for construction and code violations, it seems like. I did want to highlight 2 things under additional activity. The development of the Elite Fence and Deck at 611 East Walnut is nearing completion. They've got a few minor site items left to complete, but they've got their TCO to start moving equipment and personnel inside that building. They've scheduled their 20th anniversary and their ribbon cutting on July 21st. So stay tuned for more information either on their Facebook or through the chamber, but they are planning a pretty large event to cut their ribbon for their new Raymore location. Additionally, on that side of town, in the month of June, we attended the ribbon cutting for the Blush Boot Camp. The mayor was there with the chamber, and so it was good to see that building. Although they've been open for a couple of months now, it was good to see them formally cut the ribbon on that new location as well. One thing I wanted to highlight further in my report as it relates to this evening, if the council pays attention to the upcoming meetings that I include in the department report, one project that staff was working on dealt with a easement vacation, which you'll see 2 additional ones of those this evening. There was a request for the property at 590 Kreisel, which is in the Lemoore State subdivision. We had gone through the process, published the public hearing, and we're working with the property owner on it's a individual with some physical disabilities requesting permission to encroach into an easement for a deck that he had built. So trying to work to accommodate that request. Working with the utility companies, it was found that Evergy did have some utilities in that easement, and so staff can't support vacating it like we typically would. So instead, we're going to have to work with the Board of Adjustment to try and make some exceptions to the code to allow that deck to exist. But I did want to note that to council in case they paid attention to the meeting calendar that would have been on this evening's agenda. But due to the circumstances, we did pull that item this evening. That would conclude my staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, Mr. Gress? Yes, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Gress, for the report this evening. I did have a question regarding, you can just answer my curiosity. On the page 10 of the digital packet, which is page 2 of your staff report, the graph reflecting the single-family building permits, the very last graph, or bar chart there, is that low number reflective of the issues we're having with the landfill and the impacts on housing, or is just the time of the year that is still?
I would say that the landfill situation obviously isn't helping that scenario, but if you look at the HBA reports permit numbers for every community in the region, and I would say across the board where most communities are down permit numbers, including Raymore, has been a very slow start. If you look at the year to date for where we were last year, we had 80 single family permits at the same time of year, whereas we're at 27 this year. But I wouldn't say it's a Raymore specific item. I know Lee Summit, Blue Springs, even communities on the Johnson County side are seeing lower than average permit numbers from years past.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Mr. Holman.
Would you, as a follow-on, would you attribute that to the rise in housing costs for the individual?
Yes, we've heard from builders that it's costing more money to hold the home available after it's constructed. If home sales aren't as active as they were last year, that's a cost that can be very great to a builder, especially with the interest rates right now. So you're not seeing as many spec homes that Raymore had seen in years past. Everything nowadays tends to be an actual build job for a buyer.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Your Honor. Obviously, when you crystal ball it, how do you look at our inventory or potential inventory? I know some outside forces we're dealing with right now, but I know in the past when we didn't have the inventory, that kind of slowed things down. Are you still hearing some folks still coming and looking, and we see some potential development down the road?
Yeah, what we had, the scenario we're kind of in right now is that last year we had a handful of neighborhoods that were approved, which brought up the approved number of lots, but the construction of those lots has been a little bit slower. They've either not started their construction or they've decided to phase in that subdivision over multiple phases. So Our lot inventory is still relatively healthy. There's quite a few lots in the Creekmore subdivision. The Timber Trails third phase is active right now. So the inventory is healthy. It's just the rate at which those homes are being built is a little bit slower than years past.
And back to the first question from Councilmember Townsend, I will bring up the Parkside subdivision as an example. From subdivision to subdivision, the reasonings are different, but we know that 2 of our subdivisions stalled getting permits or even beginning on the subdivision and are directly related to the landfill.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, turn it back over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Mr. Gress. I would ask Chief Wilson to make a report for the police department.
My report's going to be pretty short. Spirit of America this year was warm but well attended. During the event, we had one minor injury. A young lady got debris in her eye. South Metro came along and took care of that. And then we had a couple parents missing their, they were lost from their 8-year-old, 7-year-old, and we found the parents. The park emptied out relatively quickly. Thank goodness. It was about 30 minutes and everybody was out. So no other issues that I'm aware of. And I'd like to thank Parks for all the help and South Metro as well.
Thank you, sir. Anyone have any questions? Yes, Ms. Forster.
I realized that we had set up the command center there for a cooling station. Was that utilized? Did anybody use it, or was it?
As far as I know, we utilized it one time, and then we were just waiting on transport for the young lady to get her eyes washed out.
Sure.
No other person used it other than us, because it was a little bit hot for us out there. We were out there at 4 o'clock, so I think employees used it quite a bit.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Chief. Next Monday, July 17th, there will be a council work session. 2 items currently on the agenda. The council will remember by your rules. Once a year in July, you have to visit council compensation, so that will be on the agenda, and water sewer rates will be on the agenda to review with you all. That concludes staff reports, sir.
Thank you. Have no further staff reports. We'll move. Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Fearborn? I'm sorry, before we move on. Okay. We have no committee reports, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, we just have the one item for the June 26th meeting minutes. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve the consent agenda, including item A, City Council meeting minutes for June 26, 2023.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. And abstention? One abstention. Okay. 7 yes, 1 abstention. I didn't realize you were going to. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3821 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3821 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the Grant Park Villas final plat, a subdivision of land located in the northwest quarter of Section 15, Township 46 North, Range 32 West, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3821 for Grant Park Villas final plat.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3821. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3826 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3826 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an amended agreement with Constable Sanitation to provide waste disposal services for the City of Raymore, Missouri.
If there are no additional questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3826, award of contract to Constable Sanitation.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3826. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3827 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3827 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Chapter 610 of the Raymore City Code of Ordinances.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Belgawad?
I move that we approve Bill 3827, amending the City Code, Chapter 610, peddlers, solicitors, and canvassers.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3827. Any further discussion? Mr. Townsend?
Yes, sir. Just a quick question. In the work session, there was, stickers were presented. When will those be available once if this passes this evening?
Melissa and I talked about that today. It would be next week that we would be able to have them. We're investigating front and back, so people could put them on the front or back of their, depending on their window situation at the front door.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to new business. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3819 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3819 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, vacating portions of the side and rear yard utility easements located on Lot 412 in the Westbrook at Creekmore 15th Plat for the purposes of replatting Lot 412, Westbrook 15th Plat, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank
Well,
you,
there's
sir.
a public hearing on this. I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and council, the next two items in front of you are interrelated, so I'll kind of explain the situation here. The first request is on behalf of Cooper Land Development, who's requesting to vacate the portions that are highlighted within the Lot 412 within the Westbrook at Creekmore 15th Plat. The purpose of this request is to adjust the property lines that were originally platted with these two lots. They're a little oddly shaped, and so it makes, in one case, building a pool, in the other case, building a house, a little difficult. So the applicant for both lots has requested to go through the process to correct those. Because it is a public hearing, it was advertised in the June 7th edition of the North Cass Herald. At the last meeting, the council did vote to continue this public hearing to this evening while staff wrapped up some of the notifications within the subdivision. Items of record include the notice of publication, the Unified Development Code, the application, the growth management plan, the staff report, the plot plan, as well as the mailed notices to the adjoining property owners. This particular phase of Creekmore was approved in January of 2019. The subject property does still remain a undeveloped lot. And staff did notify each of the utility companies that would have facilities in this easement, and no vacations were, no objections were received by staff. If approved, the next step for the applicant would be to submit a new plat, basically a minor plat to city staff to review and reestablish the property lines for this property. Staff does recommend that the council approve this request. That concludes my staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Gress. Any questions of Mr. Gress? If there are no further questions, we do have a public hearing that's open. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time on this particular matter, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Make sure the microphone's on.
Pat Wohler, 1127 Hillswick Lane. We reserved, we got a notice from here. I was just curious what the other lot was, because this is 412, but what's the other lot that's involved?
The other lot that's adjacent to it is lot 415, which is, I believe it's
That's on
facing
Hillswick.
Hillswick,
Yeah.
with an existing home on it. The intention there, I believe, is to locate a pool on that property.
I just was curious. I kind of thought I have an old.
Okay.
Thank you.
And no, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item if there are no further questions.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Belgawad?
I move that we approve Bill 3819, the easement vacation on Lot 412, Westbrook 15th Plat.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3819. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Okay, please have the first reading of Bill 3820 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3820 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, vacating an existing 25-foot rear yard utility easement located on Lot 415 in the Westbrook at Creekmore 15th Plat for the purposes of replatting Lot 415, Westbrook 15th Plat, Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
Thank you. This item also requires a public hearing, and I'll ask if there's a staff report. Do what?
Open the public hearing.
Oh, all right. I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask for a staff report.
I only went to that because I knew Mr. Azura was going to go to that.
At
So
public hearing, I thought I opened
could
it,
hear
but
him.
go ahead.
I would ask Mr. Gress to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Didn't use the word open.
Thank you, sir. A very similar request to the one that we just reviewed. In this case, the property owner is requesting the vacation for the purposes of replatting it, but for the primary purpose of locating a pool within the property. The property is located at 113 Hillswick Lane and is currently zoned PUD within the Creekmore subdivision. As you mentioned, since it does require a public hearing, we also advertised this request in the June 7th edition of the North Cass Herald, and at the last meeting, the council also voted to continue this public hearing to this evening for further review. Because it is a public hearing, the items of record include the notice of publication, Unified Development Code, the application, growth management plan, the staff report, the plot plan, and the mailed notices to adjoining property owners. Again, this is part of the Westbrook at Creekmore 15th plat that was originally approved in 2019. The home on the property was built in April of 2021, and the mail notices were sent to all of the adjoining property owners, and no objections were received from the neighbors or from the utility companies in this case either. So staff does recommend that the council approve this request and proceed with vacating the easement. That concludes my staff report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? If there are none, the public hearing is open at this time. I'd entertain anyone from the public that wish to address the council on this particular topic. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3820, the easement vacation on Lot 415, Westbrook 15th Plat.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3820. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the reading of Resolution 2325 by title only?
The reading of Resolution 2325 by title only, a resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Raymore and the Festival in the Park Incorporated Committee for the 2023 Festival in the Park event.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a staff report on this agenda item.
Thanks, sir. Mayor, members of the council. Before you tonight is Resolution 2325. It's the annual review of the Memorandum of Understanding between the city and the in-kind services that the Festival in the Park request of the city. One major change to this year's event, Mr. Barnes is normally here. He's the president of the Festival in the Park Committee. He's at Boy Scout camp this week. As most of you know, he's one of our major scout masters here in town, so I told him I would take it on for him tonight. So if you have any questions, you feel free to ask me. But the main change of this year is, in lieu of the typical carnival rides, the festival has decided to go the route of more inflatable and bounce house style of an event. So there will be several at the park, and then obviously the vendor tents, the food trucks, and those things, and the typical games and stuff that we have. So that is the biggest change to this year's event, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but outside of that, no major changes in terms of the Memorandum of Understanding. And that concludes staff report.
Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious, we were discussing it at my house, wonder why we switched from one to the other. I think it's probably a good idea, but I was curious what the committee thought, why they switched from the rides to the inflatable. Is it for a more family-oriented event?
A couple reasons will relate to me. Number one is just quality of the services. Inflatables just a little nicer than a typical carnival, and timing. The carnival that had been used wasn't available, and so they interviewed a couple and just didn't feel good about it, and so they started looking into this other route and really liked what they was being offered, and so that's the committee voted to go that route.
Will those items be rented and managed by an outside group or managed by volunteers from the festival?
Both.
Okay.
They will be rented and they will be managed in terms of operated with the rental company, but the security and overnight will be on the or on the festival to take care of those things and to watch
Okay.
those things. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else have any questions? All right, thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad,
I move that we approve Resolution 23-25, the Raymore Festival in the Park MOU.
thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, sir. Motion been made and seconded to approve Resolution 23-25. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3828 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3828 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Gunter Construction Company for the North Cass Signal and Intersection Improvements Project, City Project Number 23-389-201, in the amount of $793,225, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Murdoch to make the staff report on this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So Bill 3828 is going to make two significant improvements to the intersection there at Dean and North Cass. You'll get a signal at that intersection and then the right turn lane as you are going southbound on Dean to make a turn to go westbound onto North Cass. That's going to be the primary objective of this particular project. You'll note in your packet that while the bid, we did have two bidders and the cost is $793,000. This is a part of the governor's grant share program that we are doing. So that grant is going to cover $448,680.84, which means from our initial budgeted amount of $680,000 that we had for this project, the city's portion is going to end up being $344,544.16. So well under as a part of being a part of the governor's award for that particular grant. That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. Any questions of Mr. Murdoch? All right, thank you, sir. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad,
I move that we approve Bill 3828, award of contract for the North Cass Signal and Intersection Improvements.
thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3828. Any further discussion? Hearing, oh, yes, Ms. Abdelgawad.
Sorry, I'm a little slow. Quick question for staff. What's the timeline on this?
So I know that we're getting ready to get started here, but it won't be completed until 2024. I think is it mid-year 2024, sir?
Yeah.
I believe.
We were,
Spring
Mr.
of
Kraft was
24.
hoping for early spring.
Yeah.
But in my last two conversations with him, he's kind of hedging that towards June now.
Do you have something, Mr. Burke? Yeah.
Thank you. Question for staff. Did the grant that we received, did that come from the result of the grant writer that we hired sometime in the past, or was that done in-house grant writing? I'm just curious.
That was in-house, sir.
Good job.
Anyone else? No further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3829 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3829 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with SAT Construction LLC for the Hunters Glen Storm Repair Project, City Project Number 23-429-201, in the amount of $222,445, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Murdock to make a staff report on this agenda item.
On Bill 3829, this is going to be Hunter's Glen. Primarily, the work that's going to be done here is going to be in the stormwater culverts. You should have a map within your packet of where the culverts are going to be repaired and upgraded. We did have 3 bids come in for this particular project, and you'll note that we are well under budget on this particular project as well, so, which is a good thing. So we should see start times sometime here around Labor Day and completion hopefully by Thanksgiving of this particular year. That concludes staff report, sir.
Thank you, sir. I know, yes, Ms. Forster, go ahead.
I was just curious, whenever we have, when we're working in people's yards like this, I know it's the contractor's job to communicate with the resident and let them know. Do we give them time frames? Because I know I've been getting a lot of calls of we're still doing work in this area. Does the contractor need to like maintain, say, hey, we're looking at here, this is when we're supposed to finish, and then if it gets prolonged, do they reach back out to them to let them know? Or are they just kind of left in the dark until it's done?
Primarily on this particular project, I would have to probably defer to Mr. Krass when he is back, though we would be trying to communicate with homeowners if there's any significant delay as to what we are saying in this particular meeting, where we say September to November is going to be the primary time for this project to be completed. So if there would be any significant delay, especially going into like 2024, we would be trying to communicate to the communities that are impacted.
Anyone else? Ryan, I know that Mr. Krass isn't here to speak up on it, but I noticed on the way in this afternoon there was some major road patching going on Hubach Hill Road at the creek line down there towards School Road. Do you know if is that the only project that is that a county project that's going on there?
What you're seeing there right now is the county project. We are going to be actually, our street pres budget, as I had indicated to the council, is getting very close to running over. And just last Friday when I was meeting with engineering, I okayed our work on Hubach Hill to begin in front of some other streets on there.
Oh, okay.
Because of the condition of Hubach Hill Road.
Okay. Will this interfere with any of that road work project?
It won't be
okay.
One against the other.
All right, good. All right, thank you. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdel-Gawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3829, award of contract for Hunter's Glen storm repair.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3829. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3830 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3830 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Calvert's Paving Incorporated for the Salt Dome Pad Replacement Project, City Project Number 23-425-201, in the amount of $64,173, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Murdock to make a staff report on this agenda item.
So Bill 3830, if you're familiar with the Public Works facility, does have the salt dome over on the north side. There's a large asphalt pad where we park essentially as we pull the salt out of the dome. The pavement there has deteriorated significantly. In some cases, the pavement is gone in this, and as a result, what has happened is we get a lot of moisture and buildup of water in that particular area, which is obviously not good as it drains back in towards the salt dome. So this bill will alleviate that issue not only by replacing the pad, but also we will improve the drainage around the entire area there as a part of this particular project. That concludes staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff? If there are no questions of staff, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdel-Gawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3830, award of contract for the Salt Dome Pad replacement.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3830. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously 8-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3832 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3832 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Missouri Capital Solutions, LLC, in the total amount of $99,428.52 for political consulting services.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Your Honor. As the council is aware, while we were unsuccessful in the last legislative session down in Jefferson City, and regardless of any efforts that we may be taking with the city of Kansas City and whether those are successful or not, we do fully anticipate being back down in Jefferson City, once again seeking legislative change associated with the threat of the landfill on our northern border. To that end, staff is recommending, and I believe the mayor is joining in that recommendation to the council, that we re-engage with Missouri Capital Solutions for our legislative efforts, which actually, as we learn as we go, kind of begin in August as they begin working with the legislators ahead of the session, preparing for pre-filings in December. All of that groundwork needs to begin now, which is one of the things that we were lacking last year. We got started in January after the session had already started. So we'd like to get them on board as soon as possible. This contract would go from August 1 through the end of July next year. Their current contract ends on the last day of July this year. We have still needed them here in July. They were very effective in keeping us informed about the veto session and what had actually happened there. Strategizing for all the summer work that's being done. We know that they've already begun working with some of the senators on this piece of legislation for next year, even before we've written it. They were very effective for us last year down at the Capitol. Was not the result that we wanted, but they were, as you know, while we lost that war, we won every single battle but one. A very important one, but there wasn't a lot we could do there. We're hoping to get the early start this year and counteract that measure. With that, staff would recommend approval of the bill. That concludes staff report, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Fearborn on this item? Mrs. Delgado.
Thank you, sir. A question I'm hearing often, people see all the work that the city's doing and appreciate it and, you know, of course want to fight with us, but where's the money coming from? How are we really funding this? So that's a question people are asking, if we could share.
As the council will remember, we have a projected $4 million in available fund balance, and that is directly where it's coming from. You will be seeing in this year, and we'll add this one to it, this one will actually be in the budget for next year, coming out of professional services in the administration department. The one we paid before will be actually a budget amendment in that litany of budget amendments that you see at the end of the year for emergency items.
Anyone else? If there's no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdel-Gawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3832, award of contract to Missouri Capital Solutions.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3832. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. Thank you. That ends our new items on the report, on the agenda this evening. We'll now move on to public comments. If anyone from the public would like to address the council this evening, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less.
My name is Mike Wilson. I live at 626 Avondale Lane, which is located in Ward 3. I've been a resident for about 15 years now, and my wife and I truly enjoy living within the city limits of Raymore. I'd like to take a moment just to personally thank the mayor and everyone on the council for your efforts that you're putting forth to try to kill the fill, okay? As city manager spoke earlier about the contract with Missouri Capital Solutions, to me, that is a strong indication that you're still fighting the fight. It's not always obvious to everyone that's a member of the community that you're fighting behind the scenes, because there are no signs or anything to indicate in the front lawn of City Hall that you're fighting the battle. But we appreciate what you're doing and wish your efforts will continue and help us to resolve the problem. One thing the residents can do, we need volunteers, and there's an organization, a political action committee called killthephil.org, which is available, posts a lot of information about what the PAC is about on the website, and gives you opportunities to volunteer for fundraisers and strategic planning and all the other committees that we have available. Again, that is killthephil.org if you're interested in volunteering. It's not only, as we hear tonight, it's not limited to just the residents and businesses of Raymore. We have Grandview, Belton, Lee Summit, Southern Kansas City, all have potential impacts to the residents and the families and the businesses in those communities. And anyone is more than welcome to join the PAC. So just want to take this time and thank you all for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the public comment section, and I'll turn to, well, let's start with Mr. Burke this evening. Joe, you got anything?
Yeah, had some sad news last week. I know in the past some people looked at me like I was kind of, morbid when I talked about my dog and the dog park. But I lost my dog last Monday, and but he got to go to Wisconsin. He got to go in. He walked all the way down the hill, got in the lake twice, and came home and recognized he was home. And then the next day he passed away. So we were all with him. So that was sad. So I definitely want to see a dog park now, because go look at other dogs that I don't have to maybe get up at 3 in the morning with. But on happy news, it is my wife and I's 24th wedding anniversary today. And
congratulations.
So I appreciate her putting up with me for all these years. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Forster.
I have no comment. Thank you.
And Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you this evening for, first off, congratulations to our Parks and Rec Department on the resolution this evening for the National Park Week, or National Park and Recreation Month. You guys do an outstanding job for the city and the community. And as I was reminded when I was asking regarding when we're going to get some additional parks in Ward 1, I was reminded of the 150-plus acres that were donated near the Van Trust property. So we're looking forward to see what great and wonderful things that our Parks and Rec board and with our department can bring forward to us in that amusement park size piece of land that's down there. So that's going to be awesome for the southern part of our community. So again, congratulations to you all in that respect. And with respect to this evening, I appreciate the gentleman from Mr. Durham coming this evening on several occasions, bringing forward his concerns with regards to the stop signs. And to me specifically, while I appreciate the comments and your fervor in that effort, contrary to popular belief, I don't have the sway to tell the council what to do. We all vote individually, independently, based on what is presented to us as a council from the staff, and we rely heavily on our staff and the professionalism that they have for our community and what they serve. We've heard and said it time and time again that our staff are the best in the business. They are sought after as captains in their field. They serve on committees. They have certifications that span decades. That help us make informed decisions. And in this particular instance, that was the case. Personally, with respect to this particular topic, safety within timber trails is an issue and is a concern. I have personally run from my garage to go and help an elderly gentleman who was T-boned before the roundabout went in, having to calm him and call his wife to say what hospital he was going to be at. I've had neighbors indicate to me, and I've heard on my own street, vehicles driving at least 45 miles an hour around that particular stretch of road, and others on Shadbark, on Meadowlark, on River Birch. So yes, while it is an inconvenience with respect to the stop signs being put in, they are for the safety of our community, because we continually see children play in the streets. I see children riding their bikes. I see children coming, and I'm sitting out enjoying the day on my driveway, and kids would come up and ask for $5 for their college fund to go and do those things. So I appreciate staff doing its due diligence and bringing forth informed information for this council to make an informed decision on what's best for the community and throughout the city. So again, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this evening breaking protocol and addressing the matter. And I would encourage you, as the mayor had said, if you feel that you're not getting resolution or your answers are not being fully met, please meet with staff so they can give you a more detailed and informed layout of the decisions and what went into what was brought to this council to make the vote that it did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to the city for the Spirit of America celebration that we had on Friday, June 30th. I was up there with my wife and my older son. Excellent job getting the vendors in place, the inflatables. There was a misting tent for people to walk through. Just city staff that was up there helping park cars. It was a very hot day, a hot evening until the clouds came in. But I do want to really do a shout out to Chief Wilson that afterwards, the traffic flow. I went to a large country concert at Arrowhead about a month ago and was stuck in the parking lot for over 2 hours before I even got near a highway when I got out of there. Because of the traffic flow that they set up, I think we were out of the park within maybe 10 minutes. Turning east on Lucy Webb was a brilliant idea, so people wouldn't just try and go every direction possible. It might have took people a little bit out of the way, but it was a very quick exiting, great flowing operation there. So for everyone that was involved in the planning, the execution of that, it was a job well done. And a lot of people through comments on social media said we did a great job with that. So excellent job.
Thank you, sir. Yep, I heard some of those same comments, so thank you. And Mr. Engert.
I'll second what Councilman Baker had to say. I've heard from several residents in my area that several are new, or I should say newer to Raymore, and they said this is the best move they ever made, was to come to this city. They attended their very first fireworks display and walked away from there and said, that was fabulous. You do this every year? And so I can anticipate them bringing some grandchildren and some other people in next year to participate in that. So I did want to say thank you, and I really support it, and I'm very happy with the response that we've gotten. And then finally, for Mr. Fairborn, just to let you know, I've had several other residents. They've not really inquired about the landfill, but they've commented. And their comment is, please continue the fight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, sir. Just a few items. I will jump on the bandwagon with the kudos for the Spirit of America. Fortunately, we live rather close to the park, so we don't brave the crowd to watch the fireworks, but I always hear great reviews from people who go over there. I am a little curious, but didn't think to ask the question. When Chief was speaking, did we see any change in attendance? I know that was possibly anticipated.
Go ahead, Nathan.
I'm seeing a thumbs up from the back. So it was maybe higher than usual?
Chief Wilson and I were talking about this earlier. We typically underestimate our numbers on those events, and so we were anticipating about 2,500 while we were sitting there talking. We actually were texting Mr. Fairborn and letting him know that we had a company do a geofence for us to give us an idea of kind of what we were looking at, and our numbers were 4,680 people.
Wow.
Were
Compared
within
to-
the boundaries of Recreation Park that night.
Compared to what we usually have, we estimate at,
I believe, well, we always close the park in terms of parking, so not knowing what those numbers were specifically in previous years, we're anticipating or expecting it to be very similar to what that is, because operationally, we continue to shut down the park, and we were done, and it's packed and it's full. So I would say historically, we just underestimate how many we have normally brought into the park. So I'm thinking that we're probably close anywhere between that 4,500 to 5,000 average over the past couple of years that we've done it, based on what we were talking about, what we've seen.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks for the addendum to your report.
You're welcome.
My other comments, again, just kudos to all the staff that worked that event. I know it's lots of planning behind the scenes, as well as people all hands on deck that day. Kind of along that note, I want to just give a shout out to Dan Barnes and the Festival and the Park Committee. Those people are volunteers who work very hard to put on this large event for our city, partnering with lots of businesses and the city. And just kind of a side note, I know Tabitha's been on that committee before. I don't know if she will be this year, but they always are asking for additional people to help with that. So if anyone listening or watching is interested in helping with the festival in the park, I'm sure city staff could get you in contact with Dan or other committee members if you're interested in joining that committee. And then just wrapping up, always thanks to staff. Our staff is amazing. They work hard every single day. Top-notch people, professionally and personally, and so just a quick shout out to all the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, a lot of park talk tonight, which is good. Nathan, your board, you guys have done an excellent job. The Hawk Nest Park over there, I think you're going to have to expand the parking lot at some point. It's so popular. You know, like I said, even though we're not the park board, you know, we get the cool stuff like streets and culverts and sidewalks and all that, and they get the playgrounds and all that stuff. But anyway, I got a call today about somebody that was discovered the Hawk Nest Park and just really couldn't believe that was in Raymore and how nice it was. So that was pretty fitting today. Mr. Burke, sorry about Murray. I've met Murray a couple times. It was a good dog. But kind of back to what we talked about with the landfill, you know, the Parkside development's pulled out, directly related to the landfill problems that we're dealing with. And that was our dog park. I mean, that was going to be our dog park. So we certainly are investing the money. Mr. Wilson, to fight this, we're going to fight it. We're going to win and get these people back in Raymore developing and get the amenities that we've promised our folks and move forward from this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have two items this evening. I would start off by concurring with the comments previously mentioned. The second thing would be that I would reiterate the city's commitment, my commitment, Ward 3's commitment, and I believe this council and this staff's commitment to stopping that landfill from coming in on our northern border. If one looks at something, an action of conflict in the past, World War II, for example, lasted about 4 years as far as the United States involvement. Not every day was the Battle of Midway, the Battle of Pearl Harbor, or the Battle of the Bulge, but the battle raged on. There were small skirmishes, men died, the war went on. Strategic planning continued every single day. Our action is similar to that action and actions like it. Anytime there's conflict, you will have periods of intense conflict and intense emotion. And when those come down, people tend to forget at times. We do not forget, and we will not stop. The question posed by the constituents to Councilmember Abdelgawad were valid. It is a valid question to ask where the money is coming from. We should answer that, and we did tonight. But I will tell you, we should treat this as a serious health event to one's own person. Would you spare any expense if you were diagnosed with cancer or you were diagnosed with a brain tumor? No, you would put all your efforts, all your energy, or as Mr. Feuerborn would like to say, all your money, chalk, and marbles into that fight to win. We will do that. That will be our stance. It will be my stance going forward for as long as I am on this board. Item number 2, sir, minor in nature, but a couple of points brought up by Mr. Durham during his comments were a bit of misinformation, if you will. I'd like to correct those at this time. The first was the comment about us wondering, those that are not his representative, wondering why we hadn't addressed this or he hadn't addressed us, that kind of thing. We all represent him. We are elected by ward for geographical distribution across the city, but we represent all, each and every one of us represent all 25, roughly 1,000 citizens of this community. This is not pork barrel politics of the federal government that we want to project within a certain ward. That's not how we operate. We're nonpartisan, and we operate, or should operate, in the best interest of everyone. Sir, we are a representative to you as well as the members of Ward 3. It's a common misconception. I've seen it a number of times, but I wanted to make sure you understood that. The second thing is, you've probably figured this out. You mentioned Councilman Baker. You motioned to Councilman Barber. He's the council member from Ward 3. Councilman Baker's councilman from Ward 1, and he is on the far end. That's all I have tonight, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, I don't have anything to add. That's very well said by everyone up here at the dais, and I appreciate the comments all. And with that, do we need to go to executive session?
Your Honor, we do, and we would need to add to litigation matter 610-0211, real estate acquisition matter 610-0212.
Thank you, sir. I'd entertain a motion to move into executive session then.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss litigation as authorized by RSMO 610.021, parent 1, and real estate matters, same, parent 2.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion been made and seconded to move into executive session. Could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Ingert?
Yes.
Councilmember Forster?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
We will now move into executive session. Upon completion of executive session, we will come back out for adjournment from this regular meeting. Thank you.